Hello, everyone. This is Miranda Kennedy with the Training and Technical Assistance Provider for the DEI projects, and I'm happy to be joining you all today for our May 2015 State Lead Peer Exchange. Just a reminder for those of you who are joining us today perhaps for the first time, or a refresher, what is the State Lead Peer Exchange? Well, this is your time. The State Lead Peer Exchange, as many of you know who have joined us in the past, it really was developed in response to a need identified by our DEI state leads from across the country to have a platform to share and discuss issues with their colleagues. The State Lead Peer Exchange is an informally facilitated call targeted at DEI state leads. Again, it's very informal. But during the call, what we do is we have an individual state lead present on a specific practice that is effective in helping their projects to achieve DEI outcomes. And then after the presentation is over, there's a discussion of that topic and an opportunity to communicate with your state lead peers. So really what this does, it was designed to provide additional targeted support from your peers, other DEI projects in areas where specific projects have demonstrated initiative and success in addressing state-level programmatic issues with cross-project relevance. It's a devoted time where you can focus on those specific topic areas within the DEI in order to ensure that the objectives of your local area's DEI project, your state DEI project, and the national initiative are being addressed. It's also very helpful in terms of providing perspective on similar and diverse state-level issues that your colleagues and peers across the country are encountering, including potential pitfalls to avoid, hidden opportunities to explore, and innovative strategies to consider. So the logistics for the State Lead Peer Exchange are pretty simple. We have a state lead and their assigned technical assistance liaison give a 15 to 20-minute presentation on a practice with cross-project relevance. And then the remainder of our hour is spent in a facilitated discussion on that topic area, allowing for comments and questions. And we can use the chat box on the right-hand side. We can have folks raise their hands and unmute your lines for that discussion, what have you. So our topic today is the New York DEI and the relationships and partnership building between career centers and voc rehab. We're talking about voc rehab and those relationships with the career centers, and we have New York has offered to give this presentation. They've done a lot of work under round 1 that continues under round 4, and so providing that perspective from where they started from and what they've achieved and learned from round 1, what they're doing and continuing with now under round 4, and the vision for the future and with WIOA coming around. So what we're going to be covering today, and I'm going to hand it off to Jerry Walsh, who is our DRC statewide lead in New York, and she was a DRC under round 1 before she came to the state level position with round 4. So she has multiple different perspectives on this, and also joining her is Patrick Pascarella, who was also over the DEI under round 1 and round 4. But what they'll be talking about is that round 1 perspective that they had, the positive developments that came out of that, their experience with round 4. Going to talk a bit about Partnership Plus too, where this kind of all comes together, but certainly all of the other intervention strategies within the DEI come into play as well, as I think you'll see from some of the examples that Jerry's going to be sharing with us. And then of course the implications with WIOA, which we are all very interested in hearing each other's perspective and vision for that. So I'll go ahead at this point, and I'm going to take us to the next slide, and I'm going to unmute Jerry's line and welcome her and thank her and Patrick again for joining us today and kicking off this discussion about the relationship with voc rehab and the career centers and the workforce system. So Jerry, thank you for being here, and I'll hand it on over to you. I'm passing you the ball.
Hey, thank you, Miranda. Thank you for having me, and good afternoon to everybody. I would like to first start off by saying I think we've come a long way. And when we think back historically to previous, before the DEI projects, when someone might enter a career center and identify as a person with a disability, they may just actually been handed a packet from VR to say, okay, fill this out. but we've really come a long way. I want to talk a little bit about the New York Round 1 perspective and our relationship with VR, how it started out. When we started, we really made efforts to inform VR about the DEI project and the Ticket to Work program. And in addition to dialoguing with VR, they were on our conference calls, and we eventually had a signed MOU with VR. So they came on board. They agreed with the premise. Round 1 we had 13 different pilot sites, and we were all communicating with the VR counselors in the respective areas. And of course, we did all have different experiences, and just like Round 4 is experiencing. So of course, I'm going to highlight the positives. That's not to say that everything went smoothly and that we don't have room for improvement. But I definitely have seen some great strides made. And on the next slide, for New York Round 1 and VR and DEI, in the beginning, VR did contribute funds to our project. And they were very open to discussing the DEI project. They supported the increased access of mutual job seekers with disabilities to the Career Center, and it just started out as a very positive relationship. In the Capital Region, where I was a DRC, the Capital Region, we had 3 Round 1 DRCs, and literally we referred hundreds of customers to VR group orientations. So we were a good referral source for VR, and we let them know that. And we also tried to inform them about the Ticket to Work program to see how we could work together. That took a little bit of a longer time, and we're still working on that here in round 4. We kept track of the numbers of referrals, and we did some creating of referral letters for VR that the customers would have in their application packet, so that they would know that a referral came from the DRC, and if it was a Ticket to Work referral, that maybe we could actually pick up that customer again and give them some services beyond the case closure of VR. I know that one of our DRCs talked about having a really great example in round 1. She worked closely with VR in her small office, and she said it's really all about the personal relationship with the VR counselor and just keeping it simple. So what they did in their office was on the VR application, she would write her name on top of the application so that the VR counselor would know to go back to her when the case was closed and talk to the customer to see if they still wanted services from Kathy. And this customer was given job placement services from VR, some Microsoft Office Word training, and once the person got the job, which she got a job in social services as an office aide, it was a great relationship that Kathy could pick her up and continue to do benefits planning, and also to continue to help train her in her job. And now in round 4, it's really, I think we've really come a long way. So right now, the VR office that I work out of covers 9 counties. And they reached out to me, which I thought was fantastic. So in January, February, they reached out personally to me to say, could you come to our staff meeting and can you do a presentation about Ticket to Work and work incentives? Because we really need that. We're finding that that's a need area. We're placing people in jobs that have Social Security benefits, and then we're not accurately giving them the information they need to make the right choice about how the wages that they can make and how their benefits might be affected by earning. So that was very exciting for me to be able to do that. Another thing, in the Albany Career Center, our new manager has actually reached out to VR and tried to rekindle the relationship they had. As you know, everybody's short-staffed, and if a VR counselor might retire, and then they're taken out of a certain position and nobody replaces them. But our area is dedicated to getting VR back in our office, and we've even invited the VR counselor to present at an April, well, she already did at a staff meeting. So we're just trying to get the office reacclimated to VR, and so that we could really work closely together. So some of the strategies for New York Round 4, as I talk to the DRCs, you know, encouraging them to continue to cultivate the relationships with the local VR offices and the individual counselors. Seek out relationships with other VR staff. It's been my experience, because I'm able to get out of the office and do some, you know, committee work with some of the VR staff that are maybe not even VR counselors, but the marketing person. So I feel like if I'm connecting with those people on an individual basis, I could try to bring them to the table. I could, you know, then, you know, well, why don't you ask your center manager if I can do this, or you could ask your director if I could come in and do a presentation. So I think cultivating those relationships are really important. And of course, we want to reach out to the customers whose cases have been successfully closed with VR. That's so important. The people that are getting SSI or SSDI, when their case is closed, then they really don't have any other connection to keep their job, for job retention. They don't have any other connection for benefits planning. So we're really encouraging our DRCs in New York Round 4 to do that, to have the personal relationship with VR and try to ask those customers if they would like to continue services with us here at the Career Center. Sorry, I think I'm here. I believe the next slide is the New York Partnership Plus, which I want to talk a little bit about. And I'm sure people know about Partnership Plus, but I just want to briefly go over it. That it's the agreement between VR and another employment network. So it could be the Career Center. So after the VR services end, the individuals might need continuing support services for job retention, how to increase their earnings over time. They might need accommodation assistance. Maybe a person did not disclose that they had a disability at the beginning of the job, and now they do. So the DRC would be there to give them guidance on that. And of course, I strongly do believe that beneficiaries will need ongoing benefits advisement. It's not going to end after 90 days on the job. What we in New York want to do is we want the DRCs to continue to promote Partnership Plus with the individual counselors and with the VR management. So at every opportunity, we want to continue to talk about this. We have a nice fact sheet. I believe it's on the DEI website. We can provide those fact sheets to counselors and customers. I like to do that too, so they have that information in hand. The DRCs can offer to do work incentives presentations at VR staff meetings. Just as an aside, I've also been to the Commission for the Blind doing an outreach there as well for both their staff and their customers. And DRCs can promote work incentive outreaches for VR customers. So if I let the VR office know that every third Wednesday of the month at Albany Career Center, there's going to be an outreach for people who receive SSI or SSDI, they can certainly publicize that, and they can encourage any of their customers to attend that as well. And I think that will foster the relationship and give the customer the knowledge that they can reach out to us as well. So the next thing I just want to talk about, and I know then we'll be talking as a group and discussing, but I really believe that the DEI really can help pave the way for WIOA. And I was really excited today on the next slide when I was typing out Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And I usually say WIOA, But that word innovation just jumped out at me, and I got excited about that because we really can be part of this. We're typically, DRCs are good problem solvers. We're innovative. You know, we just have a lot to offer, and I feel like in WIOA, we can really be an active member of as this rolls out. And on the last slide that I have is I just think it will be an opportunity for us, for the leads, the state leads, to initiate conversations with WIB directors and career center managers. We can certainly offer to be part of committees and formal discussions, and we can bring the best practices of the DEI project to the table, including IRTs, asset development, and partnerships and collaborations. So, thank you, Miranda. I'll give the ball back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jerry, for walking us through that. We'd like to certainly open things up for discussion because we know so many of you, all of you, have your own relationships at the state level and are fostering those relationships at the local level with Voc Rehab and especially with the changes and everything coming down with WIOA, kind of where Jerry took us here at the end of our discussion too, and the groundwork and the foundation that's been laid with the DEI work to date. You know, in New York they had a round 1 and a round 4. Many of you have had 1 round of funding, and a number of you have had 2 rounds of funding. And what does that mean? And what are those relationships that you've already established? You know, where do you see this potentially going? And what are you doing that's innovative too? So we really just wanted to prime the pump for this discussion, share some of the great work that's been going on in New York, very strategic, hard work that's taking place, you know, taking it above the level of coordination, above the level of cooperation, and really getting to the point where we're having collaboration, meaningful collaboration, where VR is coming to New York and our DEI folks and DOL folks and asking them to attend events and join them on things. That this, you know, it's a pretty big change in the tide, wouldn't you say, Jerry?
Definitely, it is.
And it took a while to get here, but, you know, that's what we're about, and we're getting to those outcomes. You know, we're not just having great intentions, we're getting to outcomes and results, and it's exciting, and especially with the new day with the new legislation and where we are placing ourselves. It's not so much an afterthought anymore or an add-on as much as, wow, this is really central to where we're going. So I do know that I have one person in the hopper who's kind of raised their hand for a question, and I'm going to go ahead and unmute Peaches Bass line, and she's the state lead with Maine, and I know you have some things you'd like to add to this discussion, Peaches, and then I see a few other folks who have some things they'd like to contribute to the discussion as well. So Peaches, I'll hand it over to you first. I've unmuted your line. Perhaps you need to hit unmute on your own line because we're not hearing you. Okay, so while we figure out how to get Peaches unmuted, I'm going to go ahead and unmute Sinclair's line and work with Peaches to figure that out. So Sinclair, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line, and if you'd let folks know what your thoughts or comments are, that would be great.
Hi, Miranda, it's Peaches and my...
Oh, sorry, I finally figured out how to
okay.
Peaches, go ahead. You were just starting to talk, and I muted you to unmute Sinclair. Can you try again? Peaches?
No, it didn't work.
You go. I did hear you say it didn't work, so go for it.
Okay. Well, thank you, first of all. And Jerry, thank you for that little overview. Just in the interest of full disclosure, Miranda and Jerry, along with Doug Keast, were out in Maine just last week, and we had some discussion at the site visit about our relationship with VR. And our Partnership Plus. And what I wanted to start with is to point out that Maine has a unique position within its DEI staff. We actually have a vocational rehabilitation counselor as part of our staff. And we didn't realize this till Miranda told us that this was somewhat unique, but it does help us have a formal liaison between our employment and training services and our voc rehab services. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we're going to start using that more to our advantage in Partnership Plus. We have a good relationship with VR. In Maine, vocational rehabilitation is part of the Department of Labor, and they are present in our one-stops. And traditionally, staff in the centers do walk across from one side of the building to the other and actually talk to each other and work on cases together. So we've had that in place for quite a while. But what we haven't had until pretty recently, maybe the last year, year and a half, is a more robust presence for our employment network. So VR has its ticket activities that it does for its clients who receive federal benefits. In our employment and training services, which is under a bureau called BES, we also have a statewide workforce employment network. And we'd had a draft of a Partnership Plus agreement that had sort of been just caught in limbo between round 1 and round 4. And I don't have much background with round 1, but I know it was sitting there but not moving. And so last summer, with the activity gearing up in round 4, we sat down with our colleagues in voc rehab, who actually had come up with the initial draft of the agreement, and we sat down over a period of weeks and weeks and weeks and crafted a Partnership Plus agreement that we were both very satisfied with. One of our touchstones was to incorporate as little change as necessary so that staff could take this new protocol, essentially, and not feel like they're having to change an awful lot to put it into play. We decided to roll it out only in the 5 counties that DEI covers in round 4 in Maine, try that for a year, and then, depending on the outcome of it, at the end of the year, roll it out statewide. And we also wrote into our Partnership Plus agreement that we would sit down this summer and review its effectiveness. So we've got those 2 things that are coming right up. And so later this summer, we will be sitting down and taking a look at numbers of referrals, the outcomes of those referrals, is the data management system working well, and so on. Here's the thing. To roll it out, we went to each of the career centers, sat down with the staff, gave them a nice little packet full of helpful information about the Ticket to Work program. We gave them a little fact sheet. I noticed, Jerry, that you did that as well in New York. And basically spent an hour with each of the staff centers or each of the center staffs to go over the ticket, remind them about the ticket, and introduce them to Partnership Plus, which basically was not going to change things for them very much at all. Then we repeated the same with voc rehab staff, and it involved VR supervisors in those meetings. Did the same thing. People seemed very happy. That all took place in January. Since that time, we have not had a 1 referral under our Partnership Plus. So we've started considering what's been going on with this and asked our VR counselor on DEI staff, Lindsay, to start talking with her VR counselors about the ticket and the employment network and Partnership Plus to see where they were at with it. And as it turns out, they have not embraced it. It's all business as usual, and their response, which was minimal, was mostly in line with, I'm not sure how this is supposed to work, I need more information. So what it told us was that this was following the typical pattern of instituting change, however small. So last week, during the site visit actually, we got some great news from our partners in VR, Karen Fraser and Libby Stone Sterling, who are respectively the Assistant Director and the Director of Rehab Services. They've been equally concerned about Partnership Plus and are very supportive of our employment network. So they puzzled this through after hearing that it wasn't going anywhere. And we're going to employ Lindsay's services as a liaison to start connecting with her colleagues in VR on a much more individual basis, connecting with them well before a VR client is employed and therefore looking at an imminent case closure, and hook them up first with benefits counseling and then secondarily to move the Partnership Plus agreement forward so that there's a referral to the employment network that the state has. And I'll just add one more thing. Our DRCs are not certified work incentive counselors, but we have a CWIC on staff, Kathy Hounsel, who's also our Ticket to Work state lead. So we do have the advantage of having a CWIC and a state lead devoted to the employment network. So we'll see how this goes. We're hoping that having a much more direct conversation between employment services and VR months before case closure is going to help us, not only help us serve clients as they move into the world of work, but also to hook them up with an employment network that'll give them first-class services.
Thank you, Peaches, for sharing some of the evolving discussion and conversation and the relationship with Voc Rehab and around Partnership Plus, and especially how you're using that unique position with that Voc Rehab counselor who's under the DEI grant in Maine. It is a unique opportunity you can explore using her as a bridge and building that bridge and those relationships. And I think it's interesting to see how that's changed and become much more targeted very recently. But a lot of things had to kind of catch hold for that to happen, and that's just the nature of this work, living into that. We have a few questions that are rolling in. I'm actually going to unmute Gordon Graff's line. He has a question for you, and then maybe a comment as well, and then I'm going to go over, we have Sinclair also has a question, so I'll get to her in just a moment. But Gordon, I've unmuted your line, and please go right ahead.
Okay, thank you, Miranda. I was wondering if Maine would be able to share the Partnership Plus agreement that you've developed with vocational rehabilitation. We were working on one with our own division of vocational rehabilitation, and it's always nice to see what somebody else has come up with.
I'm not sure if Peaches' line is muted again. I haven't muted it, but Peaches, is that?
Yeah, we'd be happy to share it. If you want to contact me, I'm really easy. I'm peaches.bass@maine, with an E on the end, .gov.
You know, one of the things we might, because I'm sure Gordon's not the only one who has that question, right, Gordon? But we'd be happy to, if you could share that with, could send that out to everyone, and perhaps we'll also ask Jerry in New York to share theirs as well.
Sure. So, Miranda, I'll send that to you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Peaches.
You're
and
welcome.
Thank you, Gordon. Anything else you'd like to ask or share, Gordon, before I hand things over to Sinclair, who has a few questions?
Oh, let's go with Sinclair. Thanks so much to everybody.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Peaches. I'm going to mute both lines, and we'll go ahead and unmute Sinclair in Virginia. Hi, Sinclair.
Hi, Miranda. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. Actually, I was making a comment about the audio earlier. It was going in and out, but then it improved. So, but I did want to make some comments just in terms of Virginia and our Partnership Plus program. One of the things that we're fortunate about is with our DEI project, our co-director is the Assistant Commissioner for Voc Rehab. So we've had a very strong connection in that sense. And he is also on the WIOA implementation team for the state level. So that's definitely helping us with that arena. And we've got the Partnership Plus coordinator is through the VR program, and he has been implementing that program for several years now. And we also have an agreement, I'm sure I could asked him if we could share. That way people can kind of pick and choose what works for their settings or their business models and that kind of thing. And what he does is go around the state and meets with the VR staff and then pulls in the local employment networks. It may not always be the DRCs, depending on what areas are covered, but it also helps in terms of people's business models, because some customers need more long-term, even maybe job coaching kinds of supports that may not always fit the business model of the workforce investment or the workforce employment network model. So it's kind of giving customers a choice and also those business models an opportunity to market what their services will offer. And I think that that's been very helpful. So those are my brief comments.
No, Sinclair, thank you for chiming in. Those are important comments, and especially, you know, those resources you're sharing are if we could get any of those materials to share as well as we're sending out to folks who are joining this discussion today, that might also be of interest to folks. I know I would be interested in that.
Okay, okay.
If you'd consider that and either forward them on to me or to Brian, and we'll get those out to folks, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we have others who would like to contribute to the discussion topic today, who'd like to share what your experience has been, you know, the successes, the challenges you've overcome, or perhaps still engaging in developing those strong partnerships and collaborations with Voc Rehab? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and unmute Dave's line. Dave Mayer in California, how are you?
Hi, Miranda. I'm doing good. How was your long weekend?
It was not long enough, but I'm excited about our discussion today. So it was good to come back to this because I think this is an exciting topic for us, and we're finally getting out ahead of some of this. And I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say from California's perspective.
I appreciate that, Miranda. I'm really glad. Thank you, Jerry, very much for sharing what's going on in New York. We have a slightly different model here in California. One of the things that we found from the beginning was that Partnership Plus didn't seem to be the answer for the regional areas in California. And we actually found that when each one of the regional workforce areas went to bat at forging stronger relationships with the VR organizations in their area, that the Partnership Plus piece was not needed. And that really lent to what was considered one of the issues here was that it was just going to create a lot more paperwork, and there was going to be some blowback from the both the VR counselors and the case managers at the AJCs to not want to do any more paperwork than they had to. So as they started developing relationships with one another, they realized that they were already talking and they were working with the same participants. And that merged itself or forged itself into a relationship that really didn't need to have that pass through at a few of our regional regional collaboratives. A couple of them are still, have been working from round two, have been working on continuously increasing the relationship with the VR in their area. The round five, we have 3 areas and 3 pilots in round 5, and all of them have made great strides at gaining relationships with the VRs. And this was based on a lot of the input and mentorship that was given to them from the round 2 areas also. So they have a great start. We have, of the regional administrators for vocational rehabilitation here in California, there are, I believe, 7 regional administrators altogether. We have 2 of very forward-thinking regional administrators, one being in City of Los Angeles, and the other in Sacramento. And they were very instrumental in getting that relationship rolling. And both Sacramento and Los Angeles have monthly meetings between the VR staff and the AJC staff to talk about what's working and what isn't working, talk about problems or issues that may be coming up, or success stories that they're having with each one of their counselors and case managers. So things are going very well. We understand how important that relationship is. I think that partnership is more important than any other one. Not saying that the other ones aren't very important, but definitely since our participants are this one and the same in many cases, that relationship really has been focused on, and we're doing a pretty good job with the relationships here.
Well, and Dave, if I could ask, because of that regular contact and discussion that's been going on, what are folks saying about WIOA and how are they feeling, especially with the new requirements around that in terms of partnering?
VR's scared. I mean, VR has never had to deal with the type of performance standards that we have, and they really don't know yet until, of course, until the regs come out in full force and they understand what their requirements are. They are really leaning to us for support. We have a great relationship at the state level. We're not in the same building, but we're directly across the street from the Department of Rehabilitation here in Sacramento. So we have a very, very close relationship with the workforce guru over at VR, and they're working to make sure that we are communicating with them on what we're finding out, and she's allowing us the information. So the communication is open, and everybody's waiting to get more clarity on what VR needs to do to make sure that their numbers look right and they don't end up getting slapped on the hand again and again for not understanding what performance standards really are.
Right.
Getting to that level.
Well, it's interesting too. I mean, a friend in need is a friend indeed, right? And that you've created those relationships and that partnership, and now they're able to lean on you and draw on that relationship. I mean, would you say it's a different world than if you hadn't had the DEI or the DPN before that?
Not at the same level by any means. I don't think that the relationship between VR and the job centers down in LA would have happened the way they did if we didn't have the DEI going to bat. Definitely not. And if we didn't have such a forward-thinking VR regional administrator down in the Los Angeles area. And it was a changeover, so he came on just as the DEI, just as California got the DEI funding. So it was the perfect timing, absolute perfect timing.
Well, even from the nature of this discussion we're all having here today and the work that's taking place, certainly in our round 5, but also our round 3 and 4 projects that are continuing, and all of the, we've had 37 projects in 26 states to date since 2010 with the DEI. And thinking about, that's 26 states, but that's only half the country. The types of things and the strategies that, the ways in which you're ahead of the game with WIOA coming into play with Voc Rehab, and the things we might have to share with the rest of, the workforce system across the country out of this. You all are learning, you're developing not just promising practices, but best practices. Well, anyway, thank you so much for chiming in. We've gotten a great discussion going here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Dave, but thank you for chiming in to the discussion. And then we have another question coming in from our state lead in Idaho. So, Gordon, I'm going to hand it back over to you for other questions or comments from you.
Thank you, Miranda. I've got a comment about Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. We've been discussing implementation of that with our vocational rehabilitation partners, and have discovered that with Workforce Investment Act for WIA youth, 75% of the youth funding would be focused on out-of-school youth. And also under WIOA for vocational rehabilitation, 15% of their grant funding needs to be focused on youth pre-employment transition services, which would be mostly in-school youth. And so we're seeing this kind of dichotomy there of WIA youth focusing on out-of-school youth, VR focusing on in-school youth. And we're not sure how that's going to play out at this point, but it's something that we're just trying to work on as we move forward there. The question I have, though, is a separate area, and that's with our WIPA contractor, which both vocational rehabilitation and the Idaho Department of Labor use. It's a small program here in Idaho, but it has been a very effective program. Unfortunately, the contractor has not rebid on the current 5-year contract that SSA put out, and we've discovered, both VR and our department, that no other organization has come forward to bid on that contract. So we're looking at not having a WIPA contractor in the state and trying to figure out, well, what do we both do in that kind of a case? And I was wondering if anyone else has any insight into that.
You know, Gordon, that's a great question, and I actually happen to know that our presenters on today's call were put in that position when funding for WIPA went away, and they had established something that was very, you could see the foresight. It's almost like they knew that was going to happen. And Jerry, you can see the softball I'm throwing your way, right? Jerry and Patrick, I'm hoping you can weigh in on this and your experience in New York and what you did to set yourselves up for that strategy, because it's not something we actually belabored or even touched on really in the presentation. I know folks have heard about it from us in the past, but Jerry, could you speak to that issue, or Patrick, and what you did under round 1 that you continued under round 4 that's helped you in that position with the WIPA being available or the scarcity of CWICs in your state?
Sure, Miranda. What we did in round 1 was, it was a requirement that every DRC, and we had 26 DRCs in round 1, be credentialed as benefit planners, either through VCU or through Cornell. And now in round 4, it was a great, practice that we thought was very, very innovative. I think Miranda, Kevin, Patrick, they were all for that in round 1, and now round 4 we'll continue to have that practice. So that could be an idea. Gordon, I don't know if your DRCs are credentialed.
No, they aren't. About how long did it take to credential them, Jerry?
It does. It's about a year process. So when someone goes through the training, they have a full year to get permanently certified, although some of our people have done it in 6 months or a little bit less.
Okay, so probably 6 months up to a year, maybe a little bit more then. Okay.
Yeah. And in this way, I mean, I think the more, truthfully, like, I've even encouraged, I was talking to someone at VR and someone at the Commission for the Blind, talking about the Cornell certification and saying to them, you know what, why don't you bring that up to your supervisors in your offices, that maybe there should be somebody in each of your offices credentialed as well. I just think like the marriage between like an employment specialist and the credentialing for benefits planning is just so important. It just gives a better understanding when you're working with someone who has benefits of where they're at, and you can explain how earnings will affect their benefits, and most importantly that, yes, try work, and you're not going to lose your benefits right away. You're not going to lose your medical right away.
You know, this segues in as well to, we have, and I don't know if Diane in Florida would want to speak to it at all. Just raise your hand or throw up a question mark for me, Diane, if you'd like to. But Broward County, who they have some significant funds they're generating under their employment network, and they've recently hired a financial success coach who is then trained on the asset development strategies and then is also in the process and going to be going through that CWIC certification. So marrying those two different sides of the asset development piece and the benefits planning, which are, just two different sides of the same coin. So that's been an innovative strategy and practice there as well. But what Jerry is talking about too, I think it's fantastic with that relationship with Voc Rehab partners, bringing up to them the possibility of, having a better understanding in their own staff, especially if you've modeled that by having your disability resource coordinators get credentialed and certified in the CWIC certification that's out there. And Jerry, I don't know if really quickly you could share, what the costs are, or Patrick maybe, associated with that, the time. I mean, you talked about the time commitment, but is it, I know there's a couple of different versions of that where it might be like, hey, it's a week of training, you have to send them to it, but the training itself might be free, but it's limited. If you could touch on that just quickly to give people an idea of what they might be setting their staff up for, and the benefits of it too.
Sure. So there's two different choices. Cornell has a webinar-based training that takes, I believe, 8 weeks, and it's 3 times a week. And then after that, a person would need to do some initial testing for mastery of the different subject matters that are pertinent to the benefits planning. After that, then a person does a case study, and that really incorporates all the aspects of SSI, SSDI work incentives. For Cornell, it costs about $1,500 per person, and you get a manual with that. And the second way to do it is through VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, which they're given all throughout the country, and it's week-long sessions, so it's face-to-face for 1 full week with 2 trainers from VCU. And then that's very similar to after the week-long training is done, there's a period of time when you do, every week you do online testing to test your mastery of the subject matter. And to be permanently certified, then you need to do a case study on, I think VCU you need to do 3. I think you need to do an SSI, an SSDI beneficiary, and then a concurrent beneficiary. And I believe, I don't know the exact amount, but I think it's very similar, maybe $1,500, $2,000 for VCU. Well worth it, I think.
Great, thank you, Jerry. And Gordon, does that help to address, the other piece of that too is that, and what I was alluding to before as well, those DRCs in New York, many of them had their certification before the WIPA program was actually unfunded for a while there, and people were scrambling for certified benefits planners, and it sounds like you might be without a provider in your local area, but this is a way to shore up and make sure that you're not dependent on outside sources. And certainly we've talked about that as a strategy in other areas where there might be one CWIC or from the WIPA provider who's covering such a vast expanse of of space that they can't get around to working with folks who need that, and it's very important. And I'm going to go ahead because I know I see Diane's got her hand up, and Diane, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line, and I know that if you could weigh in on this, that would be great. Are you there, Diane? You might have your own phone on mute, so if you do, if you could hit unmute. Okay. I'm not hearing Diane, but maybe. Are you there?
I am here.
Oh, hi. Yes, there you are. Hi, Diane. Okay, there's a couple things I'm throwing at you there. I'm making that allusion to the challenge in Gulf Coast, but then also with your financial success coach. But anything else you want to contribute to this discussion around the relationship with Voc Rehab and the career centers? So.
Oh, it sounds like our relationship is very different. You are right. Other people are talking about writing the Partnership Plus agreement. Here that comes strictly from VR. We have no control over it whatsoever. And our workforce boards have to become vendors first, and then they have to go through the Partnership Plus program. It can take a long time. It took one of our regions 2 years because they kept losing their paperwork. And but she kept at it, and she kept at it, but we are not getting referrals. So we've had a few people go into the Partnership Plus program. It has not proven to be worthwhile for us at all, so the other regions are not bothering with it until VR can, I don't know, get their act together with it for some reason. I don't know what the problem is, but they will. And we've had Maximus working with us, and Mary Lynn worked with us on this as well, and with our VR people, and we just didn't make any headway with it. So it's been a disappointment in Florida.
Well, in Florida, you know, you're a round 3 project, and so when we're looking even to, you know, the conversation and discussion we've had today with Maine and New York, they both had round 1 projects as well as a round 4 project. So they've been in the game a little longer too. I don't know if there's anything from today's discussion that you might be able to.
I don't think that matters because we started Partnership Plus before we started DEI. When we were just when we were still doing DPN, we started Partnership Plus.
Okay.
And it just hasn't been very successful. But I think that's Florida VR. I don't think it's national VR. I think it's Florida VR. They set up lots of roadblocks. We have, and some of our regions have really good relationships with their VR, but like someone said, it is about personal relationships because some of the regions, that even though they're co-located, don't speak to each other. So that's not, hopefully that will change though, now that we're going to be more closely aligned with WIOA. I'm hoping that'll change for them.
Yeah, it's an opportunity, right?
It's an opportunity. Can only get better.
There you go. Nowhere to go but up. Like, gives you a good place to go, right? No, and I'm wondering, too, you know, you've got 5 pilots in Florida out of how many regions altogether, and would that be where they have developed those relationships, maybe that could shine a light for the rest of the state?
Actually, one of the regions that became the Joint Partnership Plus is not even a control. They're not a pilot or a control. But that's because we started before the DEI. On the CWIC, we do have one of our pilot sites has a CWIC on board, but she can't do benefits planning with her customers because they're so short-staffed. She can't sit down and spend several hours with a person doing a full-blown benefits plan, but she finds it very beneficial because she can give them a lot of advice before they see the benefits counselor. And she says it gives her her customers peace of mind that they're talking to someone who knows what they're talking about, who's not going to lead them astray. But she has a CWIC right in her area, so she's in good shape. Broward County, as you mentioned, hired a benefits planner. Their CWIC was over 250 miles away and was never going to come visit their office ever and wanted to do just phone consultations, which they didn't find acceptable. So he will be going through that CWIC training. When it becomes available, it seems like they've kind of taken the summer off. There doesn't seem to be anything going on right now, so they're keeping in touch with that. We have others that are talking about it, but it's a huge investment of time and money. And then you look at our CWIC in Pinellas County, who's part of this project, and she doesn't have time to do benefits counseling. So the knowledge is a wonderful thing, but we're so short-staffed that no one can actually sit down and do benefits counseling. So I would be very interested to hear from New York, who has all these CWICs in their regions. They actually sit down and do full-blown benefits planning with the customers, and you just must have more staff. Is that true?
So I'll hand that over to Jerry to address that too, because that's a great question. And I think too, Jerry, with the discussion as well, we were talking about, for instance, in Suffolk County and having those DRCs who have that CWIC certification going and doing outreach events with Voc Rehab clients and having that knowledge base of the CWIC certification and just the ability that you know, like what Diane was talking about, where even for the person who can't sit down for hours and work with someone, they can address some questions from a point of knowledge and being very well informed that's very reassuring to potential ticket holders who are assigning their ticket to your Workforce EN and so on. So Jerry, I'll hand that to you. And Diane, that's a great question. Thank you.
So, you know, anybody, I always would say, you know, anybody who has a question about SSI or SSDI, anybody walking in the door, I want to have a conversation with them, because I think only a person who's certified can really answer the questions that the customer has. But Diane, can you repeat your question?
Well, I'm just wondering, is your person that's going to do this benefits counseling, is that all that they do?
Oh, no.
Then you must have more staff, because and if they did do a full-blown benefits plan with someone, how many hours does that take?
Well, so the DRCs are CWIC certified, and so it's not the only job they do. It's a complement to the DRC position. If we did a full-blown BSNA, that would take, you know, quite some time. Typically, if someone's assigning their ticket, that they would need that. But for someone just seeking information or just figuring out if, you know, just asking questions about benefits, we wouldn't do a full benefits summary and analysis with those folks, because you're right, it would be time-consuming. We also try to partner with the other CWICs in the area, so there might be other people to reach out to.
Okay,
so,
if you have other people in your area, that would work, but we don't seem to have other people in our area, in any of our areas.
And I think maybe Patrick could kind of piggyback on this, because he wanted to make a comment about round one.
Oh, yeah, actually, this goes with Idaho and the situation with the WIPA not going to another contract. But what we were able to do actually under round one, and it's our federal project officer approved this, was when the WIPA project ended there, I think it was like 2012, we were able to hire 3 individuals that were CWICs from that project as regional benefits advisors here for the DEI project. So that was very beneficial to us, because we had 3 people on staff that were able to work regionally with the other DRCs and consult with them and work actually with direct customers. So that was just something I wanted to throw out there that our federal project officer approved for us under round one.
So did you hired them at the state level?
No, we hired them they were hired at the local level, and we transferred the state funds to the local area.
Okay.
Thank you, Patrick. That was, yeah, we definitely wanted to weigh in on that from earlier. That's part of what, it's great to get to that point. I was trying to tease that out, and I think that because that situation was unique and interesting, but the great thing there was, yeah, you were getting your DRCs in place to be able to have this knowledge base, but also having those 3 positions who already had gone through the training and were very well versed in it, and bringing, that was a unique position. And that's the type of example of some really effective problem solving in the moment, right? that we have to do in this work, and why it's all tailored to each of our different states and local areas, because, you know, as this discussion perfectly exemplifies, if it were cookie cutter, we would have figured it out a long time ago, but it's not. And also it's a moving target and it's ever evolving. And we're all up against different challenges and adversities that, you know, we're going to have to address. So we're kind of coming to the end of our time here. We've got 2 minutes left, but I just have to say that this has been a great discussion, and we'll be sharing some information. If anyone has, you know, additional materials or thoughts that they'd like to contribute towards this discussion, we can send that out to the group of folks who joined us today. We've also, here, let me get back to the, yes, go right ahead.
I just wanted to add that some of our regions, because 250 miles was not the longest distance, we have one pilot site that is 6 hours away from their CWIC, who also will not ever come to see them. They use, they're Skyping
Yeah, we have seen that with some of our, especially our rural projects, yes.
It's not ideal.
How's that going?
Well, it's not ideal, but it's the best they can do.
Yeah, we've actually had some of our projects even use Skyping with their integrated resource teams, because sometimes we do have to turn to technology, and it might not be the best, but it's a reasonable accommodation on occasion, right, when we need that.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for weighing in on that. Thank you everyone for participating in today's discussion on, building those relationships and partnerships, that collaboration between the Career Center and vocational rehabilitation, and really building the capacity within our DEI projects and within our system and within our partners to effectively serve job seekers with disabilities and get them into those employment outcomes. I think it's going to be a new day with WIOA, and it's great to hear you all are thinking about that and moving forward. We're really excited to be part of that with you as your training and TA team, and just really appreciate everyone's contribution to today's discussion. And we will keep that discussion moving forward. This is just one part of it. So thank you again, everyone, and thank you so much to New York for getting us kick-started with our discussion, and for Maine and for the others who've joined in it today. Thank you for helping us have a good, meaningful discussion and things for us all to take away and think about. And you'll be expecting an email from Laura probably with some more information to consider out of this discussion. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, Miranda. Bye.
Bye, Miranda.